As television has become more serialized over the years, major character deaths have become increasingly commonplace. Sometimes, however, a death is poorly planned or executed, and it tends to stand out like a sore thumb. Here are some of the shows that killed characters who should have lived. From the very beginning, Netflix's Orange is the New Black has had a highly developed sense of social justice and an admirable dedication to its representation. With this comedy drama set in a women's prison, creator Jenji Kohan and her writers have attempted to balance a stark look at criminal justice in America, with a dash of comedy and a cast of likable characters, many of whom are LGBTQ women and women of color. One of the most likable characters from day one was Pusey Washington, a smart and funny black woman who ended up in prison for minor drug charges. Of all the women on the show, she was perhaps the kindest and the most helpful to her fellow inmates. She also had some of the show's most moving romantic storylines, from her unrequited feelings for her best friend Tasty to her eventual relationship with another inmate, Brooke.
You can't live your life according to babies.
During the show's run, the Black Lives Matter movement was gaining steam in the real world, reacting against the unjust deaths of Black Americans at the hands of law enforcement. Naturally, a show as keen to promote social justice as Orange is the New Black wanted to reflect that reality in a story. So in the fourth season, Pusey was accidentally suffocated by a guard when she attempted to defuse an escalating situation. Unfortunately, the show went on to attempt to make the guard who killed her a sympathetic character. Fans were understandably angry, and the show became that much less lovable for the loss of its most likable character. In its first season, Netflix's House of Cards was a story told from two opposing angles: corrupt politician Frank Underwood and young investigative reporter Zoe Barnes. As Frank plotted and schemed to gain more and more power, Zoe attempted to uncover the truth about him. Although he manipulated her for a while, and the two even shared a creepy semi-romantic relationship, Zoe was the first to realize Frank had murdered Congressman Peter Russo and wanted to see him brought to justice. That's where Season 1 ended, and it was reasonable to assume Season 2 would see her quest continue.
Underwood's been using you, Zoe. Don't you want to know why?
Instead, the Season 2 premiere saw Underwood murder Zoe by pushing her in front of a subway train. From that point on, House of Cards becomes a story about the bad guys winning and loses all interest in featuring sympathetic protagonists. Moreover, Frank's murder of Zoe marks his turn from an amoral politician who once killed in a moment of opportunity to a cartoonish supervillain who could get away with anything. The series maintained its popularity for a while, but its story never really recovered. 15 years ago, LGBTQ relationships were much less common on television than they are today, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer offered one of TV's earliest examples in the romance between Willow Rosenberg and Tara McClay. For a couple of years after their meeting in Season 4, nothing could keep them apart. Their relationship got rocky in Season 6, but that wasn't too surprising on a show that never shied away from being a bit of a soap opera-style drama. What was surprising was the moment later in the season when, just as Willow and Tara had overcome their problems and were recommitting to their relationship, Tara was hit by a stray bullet fired by a villain who had come looking for Buffy. Tara died in Willow's arms, and the rest of the season became the story of Willow's unhinged quest for revenge against not just the villain in question, but the entire world. The loss of Tara wasn't just a blow to the show and its audience, it was also an ignominious ending to one of television's first great lesbian relationships. John Locke died halfway through the 5th season of Lost, but the actor who played him, Terry O'Quinn, was a regular on the show until it ended. In addition to flashbacks, Locke appeared in the Purgatory-esque Flash Sideways scenes during the 6th season. However, O'Quinn also took on a new role as the Man in Black, previously known as the Smoke Monster, who took Locke's shape as his primary human form after Locke's death.
John Locke was not a believer, Jack. He was a sucker.
John Locke, with his unshakable and sometimes irrational faith in the power of the island, could be an aggravating character at times, but he was set up throughout the series as a heroic and hugely important figure. Then, suddenly, he died a pathetic death, strangled with an extension cord in a hotel room, and his form was used as a host for a force of evil. Ultimately, Locke finds peace in the afterlife, but it was hard to watch that last season without thinking that he deserved better. Torchwood, an edgier spin-off of Doctor Who about an extra-governmental agency that investigates the supernatural, seemed to really enjoy killing off its characters. By the time the 3rd season rolled around, only 3 members of Torchwood remained: Jack Harkness, Gwen Cooper, and Yanto Jones. However, the 5 episodes which made up the 3rd season, otherwise known as Children of Earth, had an even darker tone than the seasons that had come before. It was Yanto who paid the ultimate price for that.
I love you.
Don't.
This upset many viewers, particularly because Ianto was in a gay relationship with Torchwood leader Jack Harkness. Fans accused the series and its creators of homophobia, despite the fact that showrunner Russell T Davies is himself a gay man, as is John Barrowman, who played Jack. Nevertheless, Davies had unintentionally stumbled into the long-standing and unfortunate cultural trope of killing LGBTQ characters in fiction. Lexa was the character whose death brought criticism of what's often called the bury your gays trope in mainstream discourse. Played by Alicia Debnam Carey on the CW sci-fi series The 100, Lexa was the leader of a warrior tribe on a post-apocalyptic Earth. Drama ensued when she fell in love with Clark, leader of a group of delinquent teenagers who'd been sent back to the planet by human refugees in space. Their political responsibilities complicated their feelings, but they found each other nonetheless and soon began a romantic relationship. Unfortunately, Debnam Carey was also one of the stars of Fear the Walking Dead, and its Season 2 shooting schedule interfered with The 100. So just as she had finally found a moment's happiness with Clark, Lexa was killed off. Not only that, but she was also shot by someone who wasn't even aiming at her, exactly like Tara on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The show's fan base, which included many LGBTQ viewers, was outraged by this turn of events, with many vowing never to watch the show again. It became impossible to discuss The 100 without talking about the Lexa problem, which cast a shadow over discourse about the series until its end. The BBC costume drama Downton Abbey was very much an ensemble show, but Matthew Crawley was a principal protagonist from the very beginning. He's introduced as a distant cousin of patriarch Lord Grantham and becomes the heir to Downton Abbey when Grantham's previous heirs die on the Titanic. He serves as an important audience identification character, adjusting to life on the lavish estate, and also engages in a doomed romance with Mary Crawley, Grantham's daughter. The two eventually wed and have a son, but one day Matthew suddenly dies in an automobile accident. Unfortunately, there was no way Matthew could remain on the show because Dan Stevens wanted to pursue a movie career and was free to leave after Season 3's Christmas special. However, the romance between Matthew and Mary had been a fan favorite aspect on the show, and his rise to become Lord of Downton Abbey was a central element of the series from the very beginning. Matthew's sudden death so totally derailed the show's storyline that it might have been better just to end it when Stevens left. How I Met Your Mother was presented as a story told by Ted Mosby to his kids, explaining how his relationship with their mother began, and diverging into countless stories of other relationships along the way. But the title character Tracy McConnell doesn't really show up until the finale of Season 8, and doesn't become a regular character until the 9th season. It took a long time to get there, but Ted and Tracy's romance actually plays out pretty well in the final season.
Funny how sometimes you just find things.
Despite everything that had happened over 9 years, viewers were primed to watch Ted and Tracy live happily ever after. And then things took a turn when it was revealed that, while Ted had been telling the story to his kids, their mother had been dead for 6 years. She passed away from an undisclosed illness, and Ted had been a single father ever since. This sets up the reveal that Robin, who Ted fell in love with in the series premiere, is the real love of his life and the woman he was meant to grow old with. That might have worked better if she hadn't spent so much of the show romantically involved with Ted's friend Barney, who she marries and divorces during the series finale. The show's creators offered the defense that this had been the plan all along, but after such a long run, it just didn't work. The twist made Tracy feel like nothing more than a prop and left a very bad taste in the mouths of viewers. Allison Argent was a hugely important character during the first 3 seasons of Teen Wolf. She started out as the love interest of Scott McCall, the show's lead. Their relationship was complicated by the fact that Allison came from a family of werewolf hunters, while Scott was a werewolf himself. By Season 3, however, Scott and Allison's romantic relationship was over, though they remained friends and allies. More importantly, actress Crystal Reed wanted to try other things, and felt a bit stifled as a 29-year-old actress playing a 17-year-old character. So she made the decision to leave the series. And at the end of the season, Allison was run through with a sword by an Oni demon. It was probably the right decision for Reed, but Allison was such a strong part of the series that Teen Wolf was never quite the same without her. Madison Clark was the glue that held Fear the Walking Dead together for 3 whole seasons. The show began by focusing on her family, as the high school guidance counselor protected her son, daughter, husband, and stepson from an escalating zombie apocalypse. It was a great role for Kim Dickens, a talented actress who rarely had a better chance to shine, and putting a capable middle-aged woman in the lead made Fear stand out from most of the rugged man-dominated zombie genre, including the show it had spun off from. Nevertheless, after teasing her absence for the first few episodes of Season 4, the show revealed in a flashback that Madison had sacrificed her life by leading a horde of zombies to their doom while the other humans escaped. When something like that happens to a lead character, you might assume it's because the actor wanted out. This time, however, Kim Dickens was as surprised as anyone to find out her character was dying, and described herself as heartbroken about the news. New showrunners Ian Goldberg and Andrew Chambliss claim they wanted to kill Madison as part of their vision for the show, but it still seems like a strange decision to make. Madison was what made Fear the Walking Dead different from all the other zombie stories out there, so why get rid of her and become more of the same? Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.